Ever get that feeling?
Yeah.
Like you're suddenly seeing yourself, but through someone else's eyes.
Oh, definitely. It's a really common kind of unsettling feeling sometimes.
Well, today we're diving deep into that very idea. It's called the gaze. It's more than just looking.
Right, much more. It's a concept explored by thinkers like Jacques Lacan and Frantz Fanon. Really powerful stuff.
Exactly. It shapes how we see ourselves, how we see others. We've got some key texts here outlining their ideas.
Mm-hmm. Lacan's psychoanalytic angle and Fanon's post-colonial racial perspective.
So our mission for this deep dive, let's try and unpack these different layers, really get into the detail of how the gaze impacts identity, our relationships.
Sounds good. Where should we start? Lacan.
Yeah, let's start there. Lacan's psychoanalytic view, he connects the gaze back to his mirror stage idea, doesn't he?
He does. The mirror stage is, that moment a baby first recognizes itself in a mirror, forming a kind of initial self-image from the outside. So the gaze, for Lacan, it sort of extends this. It's that moment you realize you are being watched, that you exist as an object within someone else's visual field.
And that changes things internal.
Fundamentally, you're not just the one looking out anymore. You become aware of yourself being seen.
It's a
Oh.
Think about how you act when you think you're totally alone versus when you suddenly realize someone walked into the room.
Exactly that. Your behavior shifts, maybe even your thoughts. You become self-conscious.
Right.
And Lacan ties this very strongly to desire, this deep need we have to be seen, to be sort of validated by the other's look.
But it's a desire that can't ever fully be met. Is that right?
That's the tricky part. It's elusive. Lacan famously said, you never look at me from the place I see you.
Wow. Yeah, that really captures it, that gap, that inability to truly know how we appear to others.
It's a fundamental disconnect in how we relate visually.
Okay, so that's the psychological layer. Now, how does Frantz Fanon take this idea and apply it differently? He brings in race and colonialism, right?
Yes, hugely important. In Black Skin, White Masks, Fanon grounds the gaze in the social and political reality of colonialism and racism. He talks about the white gaze.
The white gaze, can you unpack that for us? What does that mean in detail?
Well, Fanon describes it as the perspective of the dominant white colonizer. Under this gaze, the Black subject becomes intensely aware of being viewed not just as a person, but through a lens thick with stereotypes.
Stereotypes like?
Things rooted in colonial power, like the savage, the threat, or maybe the exotic, reductive, harmful images.
So it's not just being observed, it's being observed through prejudice.
Yeah.
It denies their actual selfhood.
Precisely. And the impact is profound. It's dehumanizing. Fanon explains how this can lead to internalization.
Meaning the person starts to see themselves through those stereotypes.
Yes, it can create immense alienation, feelings of inferiority, a real internal conflict about one's own identity. You're constantly fighting this image imposed from the outside.
He called it symbolic violence, didn't he?
Absolutely. A violence that imposes a false identity, erases self-definition. He uses this incredibly powerful phrase, feeling dissected under white eyes.
That's intense.
It conveys that feeling of being analyzed, judged, and ultimately fixed by that dominant gaze. It denies agency. It's about the power embedded in looking.
So bringing Lacan and Fanon together then, the gaze isn't just about seeing. It's deeply tied to power, control, how we understand ourselves, our subjectivity, and how identity is formed.
Exactly right. It structures relationships. Think about lovers, colonizer and colonized, even just viewer and viewed in everyday life. And it produces responses.
Like shame or desire.
Or performance, putting on a certain front. Or even resistance, pushing back against that controlling look.
You mentioned the museum metaphor before,
Right.
like beating in a glass box.
Yeah, that feeling of constant observation, how it changes your self-awareness, your behavior. It highlights that objectification Lacan talked about, but also the potential power dynamics Fanon stressed.
It's a really useful way to think about it. So, wrapping up, the key takeaways.
Well, Lacan really zeroes in on the psychological impact of being seen as an object, the internal shift. While Fanon powerfully illuminates the social, the political, and especially the racial dimensions, how the gaze operates within systems of power and oppression.
Both showing how our sense of self is just fundamentally tangled up with how we think others see us.
Precisely. It's not formed in a vacuum.
Okay, so here's something maybe to leave our listeners thinking about. Consider your own day. How might the awareness, even the subconscious awareness, of being seen maybe online, maybe by colleagues, maybe by strangers, how might that be shaping your own perceptions, your actions, even your feelings?
Yeah, it's definitely worth reflecting on. How does that gaze function in your life?